Hello and welcome to Back in My Day, the podcast where my dad tells harrowing stories of near-death experiences and overall mishaps. Please sit back and enjoy.
All right, so the second time I almost died in a Camaro.
This is part 2.
So,
Dog is still here.
yes, dog's still here. Second time, let's see.
Bjork.
This would have been senior year in high school, so it would have been 1998, and it would have been the spring of 1998, so 2 years after the first time I almost died in a Camaro.
Check out the previous episode in case you're wondering.
So, all right, so it would have been March, April time frame of 1998. And so at that point in time, let's see, R. Kelly, Lauryn Hill, Aerosmith, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, was also on the radio at the time, I believe. Tim McGraw and Faith Hill were a big deal in country music. Oh, the Food and Drug Administration approves Viagra. March 27th.
Perfect.
There you go. So, it would have been about March or April. Senior year in high school, I was, at the time, I owned a 1991 Chevy Camaro.
Same year as my Firebird.
Burgundy with T-tops. It was a 5-liter 305 V8 with 5-speed manual transmission.
Oh, yours was a manual?
Yes.
I always thought it was an automatic.
Nope, it was manual.
Nice.
That
thing must have been fun then.
It was very fun.
Nice.
Let's see. What else about the car?
I think that's why you were disappointed when you saw mine was an automatic.
No, it's fine. It's either one's fine.
Yeah, whatever.
So, let's see. Trying to remember. I don't remember what day of the week it was. I feel like it was a Tuesday. Maybe it wasn't. I think it was Monday. I don't remember.
I'll wait
I think
till
it was
Thursday.
I think it was in the beginning of the week.
I'll wait till Thursday.
No, it wasn't on Thursday. So every morning, driving to school, I would go by and pick up my friend Shane. He and I had been friends, lifelong friends. Like we were friends since before we started kindergarten.
He's one of those friends that, I call him an uncle type thing.
Yes, he is effectively an uncle to my children.
Essentially, yeah.
So he is the closest thing in the world that I have to a brother. So anyway, went to pick him up. Oh, incidentally, he and I are only 11 days apart. Like, we were born same month, just 11 days apart. He and I, we've been friends forever.
If you need any further proof that they've been, like you just said, friends forever, there you go.
Yeah. So, I would leave my house. I would go to this tiny little town that was halfway between where we lived and where we went to high school. And so he and I would meet at this tiny little town, and then we would switch off driving. One day he'd drive, next day I'd drive, whatever. So he had a computer, and this is back in the day when computers were, you didn't have, like, I guess maybe Dell was around then, I'm not sure, but it was in the days of compact computers. IBM still made, like, home computers for home use.
Windows 98 was a brand new thing.
Windows 98 was brand spanking new.
The hot new trend in technology.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
It was like Skynet type stuff back then.
Oh, it was crazy. So
I say that and I'm recording this whole thing on my phone, so
so anyway, the reason this is important, the thing about the computers, so Shane had a computer that he had bought from a man who built computers. This is back when people could actually make a living, like buying parts and building computers and selling them. And they were a lot less, which, I mean, they're still complicated, but they're a lot less complicated then than they are now. Mainly because it was, there was big tower computers. It was a desktop computer. It was a big thing. It was easy to put parts in and out and change parts, and you could soup them up or whatever. Anyway, so Shane had a computer. He needed to get it fixed or something. And so when I went to meet him at our normal meeting spot, he was not there. And so his mother, because we met in the parking lot of where his mother worked, I talked to his mom. His mom said, oh, yeah, he's over at so-and-so's house dropping off his computer. Oh, okay. You know, he needed to get his computer fixed. So I was like, all right, well, I can either, you know, and my choices now were either to wait here until he gets back, or I could ride out there and see what he's doing. Well, I just happened to be a little early that day. Normally met him at, 7:45 or something like that, and I just happened to get there at 7:15 or something like that. Anyway, I met him, I was going to come, I just happened to be early. So anyway, his mother said, yeah, he's dropping the computer off. So, okay. And I said, well, where's that? And she told me, and she's like, it's on Horseshoe Bend Road down next to so-and-so. I'm like, oh, okay. I know where that is.
Obviously, with a name like that,
Yes,
has a horseshoe bend in it.
Road, yes. Keep that in mind. That's pertinent to the story.
That is very pertinent.
So, I've got my Camaro. It's, first thing in the morning. And I'm going to go and meet my friend Shane, because I hadn't met the little man who built the computers. I'd heard a ton about him, but I never met him. So I was like, yeah, I'll go shake his hand and see him, whatever. So anyway, for some reason, I decided it'd be a good idea to go down there. And I was going to go meet Shane down there. Well, we ended up, I ended up, I was cruising on down the road, and I missed the driveway where the computer man was, because I was not paying attention, and so I missed his driveway. And I thought, okay, no big deal. I'll just go on down this road a little ways and turn around and come back. So I get to the bend in Horseshoe Bend Road.
Imagine.
And just to try to paint a picture here, it's the way this curve is, it's not really gradual, but it's not really sharp. I mean, it's
sort of
curve is a curve. I mean, it's a serious curve, and it's kind of a long sweeping kind of curve, but it's not sharp, but it's not gradual either. Anyway, the road curves around to the left, and not only does it curve, but it also goes downhill and curves at the same time. Well, as I was cruising on down the road, again, another deer in the road.
Or something.
And anyway, as I'm coming along and I'm driving too fast, because...
Same formula from last episode.
Yes. And, those cars will do that to you. They are fun little cars to drive, and they'll make you think you are a lot better driver than you really are. And that's exactly what happened to me. I thought I was a much better driver than I really was. So, cruising on down the road, and get to where the road starts to dip and curve, and I'm going a little too fast, right? Something in the road, I mash on the gas, or excuse me, the brake. I mash on the brake.
If you mashed on the gas, you probably wouldn't be here.
So I mash on the brake, and as I'm coming along, the car, the wheels lock up, and the car slides out the road and over the embankment. And the embankment was probably 10 or 15 feet of an embankment. And anyway, the car is over the embankment, and you can clearly see the little skid marks in the road where when I came into that curve, I was closer to the center of the road, and you could just see the skid marks from my tires just go right on out the road. And so car goes over the embankment.
To clarify, I don't think they're still there anymore. Like,
No,
obviously
they're
they've been
not
worn off, but
No, we've driven down there and looked at it.
yeah.
Because I needed to point out
You needed to point out to your son exactly where you almost died.
Yes, and this is a valuable life lesson. Don't do what I did.
I'm just not going to drive down that road.
That would be a good thing too.
It would probably help the situation.
Yeah. So I go over the embankment, and the car, as it goes over and down the embankment, it bounces off of two trees, skids off one tree on the driver's side fender, and then hits another tree on the other side, skids off that fender, and so it skidded up and it jacked up.
Made a zigzag shape.
Yeah, it kind of like
bounce one,
like
bounce
a plink,
two.
like a plinko board. I just plink, 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 plink off a couple of trees. Come to a stop, and the car is sitting at basically a 45-degree angle because of how steep the embankment is.
What do you think stopped you?
So the ground.
Fair enough.
So basically, I had I had a head-on collision with the dirt on the ground there.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so anyway,
toast.
the car is still, it's still on its tires. It didn't roll over. I was wearing my seatbelt, luckily, and so airbag didn't go off because I didn't have a direct front end collision.
Because
which is probably a good thing, because if the airbag had gone off, they would have total lost the car.
back then, the airbags were slightly less advanced and like to the point where my Firebird, his Camaro, didn't have passenger airbags.
Yeah,
it was just the driver's side. Because 1990, and here's a little history lesson for all you don't know. In 1990, airbags were regulated to be put in every single production car for a safety measure. Back then, they were called SIRs or SIRs, not SRS airbags, and they were.
Okay, can I finish my story?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So car comes to a stop. I get out, flip my door open, crawl up out of the ditch. All right, and anyway, crawl out the ditch, and then I get up, and I'm like, I'm so shaken. I don't know what to do. Like I'm tore up, right? And there is absolutely no. Like, I'm looking at this, and like, there's no way I'm gonna get this car out this ditch. And so now I'm like, oh great, now I got to figure out how to get back to town, because now I'm on a road that nobody travels, and I didn't really know what to do. It was before cell phones.
Obviously, 1998.
Yes, or it was before I had a cell phone. I mean, people had cell phones, but
Closest thing they had was
I didn't have one.
What were they called? It was like
Flip phones were just starting to become a thing.
they were beepers, weren't they? or
Old
something
school
like that?
flip phones. Yeah, we had. Yeah, some people had pagers. I didn't have
Pagers, that was it.
I didn't have a pager. So ended up, like I said, crawl out the ditch, crawl up into the road. I'm sitting there, and this is like a road that very few people live on, and it's very remote, back road in rural Virginia, and so an old, and I'm gonna say at the time it seemed ancient, but it really wasn't that old at the time. But it was about a 1980 or early 80s Bronco 2 pulled up.
Nowadays, those are ancient.
Yeah, they're ancient now, and hardly any of them still on the road. But at the time, anyway, this thing showed up out of the blue, and it was rough. It was a rough little. I remember thinking how rough looking this vehicle was, and I'm like, oh great, I just got out of a car wreck. Now I'm gonna get mugged. Well, anyway, come to find out, it was three guys that worked for a logging company, and they were on their way to work. And anyway, they were like, they saw the car and they're like, "Oh man, you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He's like, "Here, I'll give you a ride back into town." Okay, thank you. So anyway,
Nowadays, it's a little more sketchy.
Yeah.
But
So anyway, I had to crawl into the back seat of this ancient old
nowadays,
Bronco
ancient
2.
old.
Yeah. Well, it was rough. It was obviously smelly. It was three big dudes going to cut wood for a living.
Fair enough.
And so anyway, they had all their chainsaws in the back, and I'm still like half shook up. And so anyway, they take me into town. They drop me off, and as I go to get out of their car, I jammed the side of my hand, and I don't remember if it was my left hand or my right hand. I think it was my right hand, but I jammed the side of my right hand against the bar on the chainsaw, and the chainsaw they had in the back, the one that I hit my hand on, had something called a bow bar, a BOW, bow bar. If you don't know what that is, Google it. You'll see what it is. So it's this
Even
big,
I don't know what that is, so I can't do an explanation. I'm sorry.
So instead of a long, skinny bar like you think of on a chainsaw, this had a really large, round thing. It was a very specific use for cutting wood. It was very, it was a very useful modification you can make to a chainsaw, but it was also very dangerous. A lot of people cut their legs on them because of the shape, and you had to be very careful with it. Anyway, I cut my hand, the side of my hand on that thing, and it just sliced my hand open, and it was bleeding like crazy. And so I got back, back to the thing, and so, went back to the little business where I was supposed to meet Shane, where his mother worked. And anyway, dropped me off there, and anyway, ended up calling the police, called the state trooper, called my dad. They came and picked me up. We went and looked at the car. So anyway, now that doesn't sound like I almost died in a car wreck, but the thing I didn't realize at the time of that car wreck was just how I would have died if not just for pure luck. So when we went, when we went to pick up, went to the scene of the accident, went and looked in the car, and at the time, I was into sound systems in cars, and so I had built a custom-made subwoofer box, and had two 12-inch Pioneer subwoofers in that box, and it sat down in the trunk of the Camaro.
For context, those trunks are tiny. You could basically just put a speaker box in there if you wanted to. That's just all it is, because the fuel tank is sitting right above the back driver's axle.
Okay. So the trunk, and of course, like a Camaro, if you know anything about third-gen Camaros,
someone in my audience will.
Okay. Look them up. Just Google
including myself.
Just Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it was a hatchback, and so the trunk and the trunk and the compartment where the passenger compartment was all one space. It wasn't separated by a trunk. Well, so when I went over that embankment, the 6,000-pound speaker box that I had built, because it was very heavy, it wasn't actually 6,000 pounds.
I was going to say, that sounds like an exaggeration. That weighs more than the car.
Yes, it was an exaggeration. The extremely heavy speaker box that I had built, and I made that thing solid too. It was hefty. When I went over the embankment, that thing slides up out of the trunk, and it flies it slides into the passenger compartment, and my car had a little, like a roll-up privacy cover thing that went over the trunk, and so there was this little bar that went across there, and so this little privacy cover thing that would cover your trunk so people couldn't see your stuff.
Something I should probably get for my car now that I think of it.
So the speaker box comes up out of the trunk, flies up, and it's stopped by this weeny little bar, and so it slams into that thing and bends the crap out of it, but luckily it stayed in place. And so if that little bar had not stopped that speaker box, it would have hit me in the back of the head, and it would have crushed my head into the steering wheel. And so luckily I survived. That did not I did not die from that incident.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. So a lot of valuable life lessons I learned from that was to, number one, slow down, don't drive so fast. Number two, pay attention to what you're doing. Number three, you don't really need to like spend every waking moment with your friends. You could just wait. But I made a bunch of bad decisions that day. Securing the speaker box was something that I should have done. I did not. And so ever since then, I'm pretty like adamant about securing stuff down that is extreme, that's heavy, right? Stuff that can fly around in your car and kill you in an accident.
Trust me, I know.
So anyway, it was an interesting day. So that was the time I almost died.
In his own Camaro this time.
Yes, the second time I almost died in a Camaro. So just to give you some follow-up on that, the car ended up, we sent it to a body shop. The car doesn't have a frame, it's a unibody car, but they ended up having to put it on a frame stretcher and try to take, like, the unibody was twisted a little bit, and so they ended up having to fix it. So they twisted it back into place, replaced a bunch of parts, new fenders. The hood was a little jacked up, but the body guys were able to straighten it out, and they did a pretty decent job. Not the best job in the world fixing it, but
better than nothing, right?
For a high school kid and in a
at the time
sports car for a high school kid, it was fine.
Keep in mind, at the time that car was only 7 years old.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't very old at the time.
So there you go.
So anyway, it was a definitely life lesson and a learning experience.